Hello again, welcome back to Asgard, and welcome to the first episode of our Mod Spotlight miniseries for the mod IC2 Classic for Minecraft version 1.10.2. So for those of you that don't know, IC2 Classic is at its core, it's IC2. However, it has a plethora of added features, new features, expanded upon features, new blocks, new mechanics, new machines, a lot of really refined blocks and mechanics. I mean, there's just so much content. So at the moment, my current plan is we're going to have 5 episodes within the Spotlight, as well as some additional videos just to help you guys starting out with the mod and everything, because this should be coupled up with the release of the mod. And so I want to give you guys the information and have it ready for you guys upon the release for any questions that you might have. Now, however, as we progress through this, if you guys have any questions or you feel like I didn't cover something in detail enough or something like that, let me know, and I will do my best to get those questions answered for you. I will say that within this mod there is a few Easter eggs and a few hidden little snippets and stuff like that that I'm not going to cover. Little things that are kind of out there for you guys to find on your own. They're really, really cool, I will say that. There's some really, really neat stuff in here. So just a heads up, keep your eyes peeled for that stuff. But like I said, I'm not going to explicitly tell you guys how to access those or how to find those. They're really, really neat little things. But anyways, this first episode is going to cover basics and mechanics of the mod, because there are some changes. Now, some of the stuff you guys might be familiar with, because if you're familiar with IC2 Experimental, which chances are, if you are familiar with modded Minecraft, you are familiar with IC2 Experimental. However, there are some very drastic differences between Experimental and Classic. So within this first episode especially, there might be some stuff that you guys are familiar with, but I want to cover everything in detail and make sure that if you're not familiar with IC2, that the information is provided for you here. Now, just as a quick roadmap to give you guys an idea of what's coming, in this first episode we will be covering basics and mechanics of the mod. Second episode we'll be covering power generation within the mod. There is a ton of new power generation within IC2 Classic. In the third episode we'll be covering machines and power usage, really fun stuff. Fourth episode, upgrades and tools, and let me tell you, there is a lot of new features in that section. And in episode 5 we'll be covering nuclear related items, and I will say that there is a lot there as well, including a brand new reactor type. There's also a lot of really, really useful items that'll help you with reactors, as well as even a new jetpack. It's some really, really exciting stuff. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Now, before we get started, I do want to mention that we are currently on the IC2 private beta test server, and Spiger, who created the mod, him and I got together, we built this nice little area for you guys to kind of showcase the mod. And as we progress with the showcase, we'll kind of fill this out, add machines and all that, and by the end of it we'll have this building filled with all the different IC2 Classic stuff. Now, I have a lot of stuff set up and prepped and ready for you guys, but we'll be working in different areas of the building as we go. But anyways, let's go ahead and get started with the basics. Now, before we get started with the blocks themselves, let's take a look at the controls. There are a fair few controls, just as a heads up. You have an Alt key, a Boost key, a Hub Expand key, a Mode Switch key, a Side Inventory key, and a Toggle key. Now, some of these we're not going to be using in this first episode. Some of these are related to things like the Mining Laser, the Jetpack, things of that nature. I don't think there's anything within the first episode that's going to use a lot of these keys. Now, there's also a nice little feature of the mod that I want to bring to you guys' attention that's very, very unique. It's not something that you really see, and honestly, I wouldn't have expected it to be in here, and it's amazing. It's just kind of tucked away. But if we take a look here at achievements, so for example, right here, cow tipper. Okay, now, repopulation, of course, requires that I feed 2 cows to breed them, right? Well, it requires cow tipper before I can unlock repopulation. And cow tipper is harvest some leather. Now, for example, if I come over here and I place down a couple cows and I feed them, pretty standard stuff, but here's where it gets really cool. Achievement repopulation saved. When the requirement is unlocked, it will be auto-unlocked. So what this does is this allows you to retroactively unlock achievements. So basically, once I go and kill a cow now and I harvest leather, it's going to give me the cow tipper achievement as well as the repopulation achievement. So if I was to take and throw a piece of leather down here on the ground and pick it up, there we go. I just earned cow tipper and repopulation, because that's a feature of the mod. it will allow all your achievements, even modded achievements, not just vanilla achievements or IC2 classic achievements, but even modded in achievements, it's going to save that data to your character, and whenever you meet the requirements of that achievement, it's going to retroactively unlock that for you. So really, really nice feature. I wanted to bring that to you guys' attention. And just a couple other small notes about some mechanics within IC2 Classic that you may not be aware of. First up, IC2 Classic includes a new crafting mechanic called stack crafting. Now, if we look here at the plasma core, this is a very advanced late game item, but you can see that it requires 2 magnets on each of these slots and 4 advanced alloys. Then if we take a look, for example, at the industrial work table, this requires 28 crafting tables. And then lastly, if you take a look at the restoring fertilizer, this takes 2 stacks of water cells, 2 stacks of compressed air, and 2 stacks of fertilizer for that. So basically what stack crafting is it's a mechanic where a crafting table can actually accept multiples of an item to craft a single recipe. Now, a couple nice notes about this: it's fully integrated with JEI so that it can show up in here, and also things like refined storage and applied energistics 2 will accept these recipes for their auto crafting. And just as a side note and a heads up, while we're on the topic of crafting, as we progress through this spotlight, I don't generally cover recipes, and the reason being is because first up, pretty much every pack and every player is running either JEI or NEI, and then in addition, it's become a very common trend, and one that I personally love, where a large number of packs have custom recipes, tweaks, all that stuff, so recipes are never set in stone, and I feel like it just adds a bunch of extra unused time. I know me personally, if I'm watching a spotlight and they start going through all the recipes, I immediately turn it off and go find a different spotlight. So I will not be specifically covering every single recipe as we progress. Now, certain times I will show recipes like I just did for certain things, but as a general rule, I do not do that. And 2 other quick notes about mechanics within IC2 Classic. First up, if you're running Tinker's Constructs, IC2 Classic has re-added support for power upgrades to be added to your Tinker's tools. So if you're missing the 1.7 upgrades where you could add RF power storage to your tools and charge those up, that is a thing within IC2 Classic. And basically you can add things like the MFE and the MFSU to your tools, and they will have different power storage based on what power storage item that you add to your tool. And a final note about the mechanics within IC2 Classic: there has been a ton of work that has went into tooltips. That is a major thing that has been added within this mod due to the number of upgrades and things that are added. For the most part, you're going to notice it a lot on the upgrades. So you'll see right there, press Control for key usage, and you can see the different keys that you're going to use with that export. And this is also true of other things, not just the upgrades. So for example, the quantum suit boots, you can see if I hold Control, it says press add to jump really high. Now where it says press add, that is updated in real time. So if you go into your controls and you change that, that is going to be updated. It's going to reflect what your controls are set to. So if you happen to forget, you can just check your whatever you're using that has a key bound to it, and you can see what key you need to press. Also, some tooltips like the quantum suit body armor will have hold shift, and you can see that it removes fire from you. And then you'll also notice that on some of these upgrades here, there is a press alt and you can see stat information. And what stat information is it tells you what you currently have that upgrade or whatever, it's relating to, what you have it currently set at. So for example, for round robin, you can see what you have bound to slot 0, slot 1, slot 2, slot 3. We'll get into that a bit more once we hit the upgrade section. But I just wanted to bring that to your attention. There was a ton of work that went into the tooltips and stuff, and they are so handy to have. It's such a helpful addition to IC2 Classic. And with that, let's go ahead and get into the mod itself. Take a look at some of the stuff I've got set up back here. So first up, let's talk about ore generation. There are 4 ores that are added to the world with IC2 Classic. Those ores are copper ore, tin ore, uranium ore, and silver ore. That's all the ore that it adds. Now it also adds this. This is iridium ore, but it doesn't spawn in the world. This is created only using UU matter. That's the only way to get iridium ore. Now in addition, it also adds block versions of each of those. So there's bronze, there's tin, there's copper, there's silver, there's charcoal. I've actually got over here, there's uranium. We'll get into these blocks later, but there's the block of uranium. And then there's also iridium stone. Now iridium stone is special in the fact that if a player places it, other players cannot destroy that iridium stone. It has, for one, it has a very high break level, but in addition, other players cannot break other players' iridium stone. So if you place it, it is going to be player protected. And just a couple quick notes regarding metals before we move on. First up, if you come across uranium ore in the world and you mine it without Silk Touch, you are going to get this uranium ore. Now this stuff, to process it, we're going to have to get the compressor. We'll wait. We're actually going to wait to cover uranium until we get into the nuclear stuff, but I just wanted to give you guys a heads up on that. This, this doesn't place as a block or anything like that. Also iron, if you smelt iron, you will get refined iron. So you do have a smelting recipe for iron in IC2 Classic. So just a heads up on that as well. Now next up, let's talk about a couple tools that you're going to want when you're starting out the mod. First up is, of course, a tree tap, right? You guys are probably familiar with this thing. You right click it and you get sticky resin. If you right click on one of these rubber spots on a rubber tree. Now rubber trees, of course, are very easy to notice because they have this one wide set of leaves that kind of rise up out of the top of it, right? So very, very easy to spot. And of course you can break these, you can get saplings and all that. Pretty standard. Now one really nice thing though to bring to your attention is if you take sticky resin and you right click it on the ground, you can actually place that sticky resin onto the ground. And if you fall on this, you will actually get a little bit of fall protection. You don't bounce or anything, but you do get a small amount of fall resistance. So you can fall a bit farther than standard. And if you land on that resin, it's going to protect you from a little bit of the damage. So just something nice when you're starting out. If you need a little bit of fall protection, that's just something nice to throw down and help yourself out. So now we've got some sticky resin. Let's go ahead and throw this in the furnace. You can either cook it in the furnace for 1 rubber, or you can run it through an extractor if you have access to that. That is, once we get into power, then you can get the extractor. But extractor will give you 3 rubber per 1 sticky resin, so it's something good to kind of make your way towards. That's going to get you rubber. Now that you've got a few pieces of rubber, there's a few things that you can make within IC2 Classic, even before you start getting into power and cables and insulation, that use rubber. And the first is these rubber sheets. Now these can be placed down just like this. And they do have to have a block on their side. So in this case, it's the grass block. If I try to put this down straight on the ground, it's not going to be placed. But if we put this down, what it does is it forms basically like a trampoline. Now, if I was to jump on this, you see that I bounce, okay? It gives you fall protection. 100% you're not going to take damage. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's about like a slime block. Well, that's not exactly correct, because if we were to go up and hold shift when we hit the ground, we're going to stop, like a complete dead stop, no matter how high that we jump from. However, with a slime block, you can also do that, but you're going to take fall damage if you're at a height that would give you fall damage, because it's basically going to negate the effect of the slime block. However, with these rubber sheets, it's going to still negate the fall damage even if you hold shift. So really, really nice feature of those. Now, next up, we have the rubber boat. Now, this is my favorite block ever. And if you stay tuned till the end of the episode, I will show you this. And I will show you why the rubber boat is my favorite thing. I have found the future of Minecraft. But if you take this rubber boat, of course this works like a vanilla boat, but another added feature of this is that it bounces. So it works just like, other rubber items in that it bounces you around, and you can actually prevent fall damage. Now, if you fall from a height of 40 blocks or more, it will destroy the boat. So for example, if I come way up here and I jump off, you'll notice that it breaks the boat and I get this rubber boat broken. The standard boat requires a boat and 5 pieces of rubber, but then if you get the broken boat, you can just repair it fairly easily and fairly cheaply. Now let's talk about some basic machines that you can get. IC2 Classic actually offers you ore doubling, a more efficient furnace, and a way to get wood gas, which we'll get into wood gas next episode a bit more, but we will briefly talk about the wood gasificator today. So first up, you have the stone macerator. this is an early game ore doubling system. So this runs off any kind of combustible item. This can be coal, this can be buckets of lava, it can be wood, sticks, any of that stuff will work just fine. And then what you can do is you can throw in your ore. And what it's going to do is it's going to slowly, the progress is going to build up, and it's going to ore double your ores for you. And you can see right here there's a nice progress meter, and there we go. We got 2 iron dust from that. And a single piece of coal will double 2 ores. So it's not the most efficient thing in the world, but it is very, very cheap ore doubling, only requiring a little bit of cobblestone, flint, piston, and a furnace. So not very expensive at all. Next up we have the iron furnace. This is a more efficient furnace. 1 piece of coal will cook 10 items. So very, very efficient in that regard. And you can just throw your items in there and it'll start cooking them. You can see that it's actually faster than a standard furnace. 1 piece of coal is still going to burn for the same amount of time, but in that time you're going to be able to cook 10 items instead of 8. And this just requires a little bit of iron to get this up and going. And lastly, we have the wood gasificator. Now when this is supplied with some kind of combustible item and wood, it's going to actually smelt that wood into charcoal, but it's also going to provide you with wood gas. Now wood gas is a fluid, and it's used in power generation, and we'll get into that next episode whenever we cover power generation. But one thing to note is there's actually an electric wood gasificator. However, this standard wood gasificator that runs off of combustibles actually gives you more wood gas than the electric one does. So depending on your situation, this may actually be a better choice because it is going to provide you with more of that liquid wood gas. So just something to keep in mind, especially whenever you have access to the electric one, you may not want to immediately switch to that. So next up we have the industrial work table. Now this block is absolutely amazing, and it has a ton of really nice features that I think you guys are really going to like. Basically, the industrial work table is a crafting table, as you can see right here. However, it has an internal inventory, and it has these slots over here. So what we can do is we can throw in a piece of wood, and if we throw a piece of wood into the internal inventory, we can click and we can craft ourselves some oak wood planks. Alright, now in addition, if we were to put this in, we can actually hit save right here. And you'll see that it shows all these little memory stick images. And what you can do is you can just put this recipe into any of these slots, and it's going to save the recipe. So if I was to throw a bunch of wood in there, and I was to clear out my crafting table, if I click on this oak wood planks, there we go, there's my recipe, and I can just craft that, right? Now, in addition, we can set up, let's teach it chests. We'll go ahead and save that recipe. And then we'll also teach it, here's sticks. We're going to save that recipe. And then while we're at it, let's go ahead and teach it just a basic drawer. Okay, from storage drawers. And we'll go ahead and save that. And so now what we can do is we can hit, say, the basic drawer. We can craft a basic drawer, right? Now, in addition, another really, really nice feature is right here below the crafting grid. You can see there's a couple buttons. And there's one for restock inventory. We'll get into that in a minute. But there's also recursive crafting. So let's go ahead and turn that on. And let's say we want a basic drawer. We don't have any chests in here. But if we click on this, there we go. We can make ourselves an oak drawer. Now this, there we go. There we go. Even though I don't have chests and I don't necessarily have oak wood planks in there, it's going to craft that stuff from the oak wood and go through all the crafting steps for you. So just something, this is absolutely amazing already. Now there's ways to make it even better. First up, you can take memory sticks and you can put these into this slot here. And you can have up to 2 memory sticks per industrial work table. And what it's going to do is it's going to unlock an additional 9 slots for each memory stick. So you start with 9 slots for recipes, then you can go to 18 and then 27 slots in a single industrial work table. And keep in mind that all of this has recursive crafting. So, I could then make all kinds of different recipes involving the drawer, and it's going to go through the whole process of breaking down the oak wood and making the planks and making the chest and making the drawer for you. Now, in addition, you have a few options here. You can set it to use NVT, you can set it to ignore durability, or use OR dictionary. Now, there's also a really nice feature here, Center GUI. And what this does is you can see right here, pay attention to where the GUI is. If we click this, it's going to kick us out of the work table, and when we reopen it, there we go. The GUI is now centered on the screen, and you can see that JEI is actually pushed over to the side so you don't have blocks sticking through. You can still fully access this entire GUI. So just a really nice feature that was added to the industrial work table. Now another really nice feature of this is if you were to take a memory stick out and throw it back in to another industrial work table or the same one, you can see that it retains its inventory. And these memory sticks, you can actually go into an anvil, you can throw them in, and you can say, let's rename this to charcoal recipes. And there we go. We have a memory stick now called charcoal recipes. And then we can throw this into, back into our industrial work table, and it keeps its recipes. So just a nice little feature of this. You can, if you just have one industrial work table, you can have multiple memory cards and just switch them out as need be. Now another really nice feature of this, if you look in this chest, I've got 64 charcoal in this. Now let's throw our memory card in here that has our charcoal recipe. And let's throw some charcoal in there. And we'll turn on recursive crafting. It doesn't really matter for charcoal, but, And then we're going to turn on restock inventory. Now what restock inventory does is any connected inventory to this industrial work table, the industrial work table will access it and attempt to, after each craft, restock the items that it used to craft whatever item that you crafted. Okay, let's say we're going to grab a charcoal block. We'll grab that, and you'll notice now there's 64 charcoal in there because it accessed this chest and said, there's charcoal in there, I'm going to use that charcoal to restock my inventory. Now, you'll notice that it left one in there because it's not going to fill up these slots. Basically, when stuff is in these slots, it's going to remember those slots. So that's just a very nice feature of the industrial work table. It can access chests that are next to it. And in addition, just as a heads up, when you have recursive crafting turned on and you craft something, it's going to wait until it's done crafting that item. It's not going to try to restock after each step. It's going to try to craft the entire item and then restock. So that way it doesn't constantly, run updates between the chest and the industrial work table. It only runs an update upon completion. So just a heads up on that. Now, in addition, the industrial work table will access storage drawers. So for example, if I take this oak wood and I throw this into storage drawer over here, right? I have a drawer controller next to this industrial work table. And let's say I wanted to craft a chest. And let's turn on recursive crafting and restock inventory. And let's grab ourselves a chest. You can see that it pulled the oak wood from that storage drawer because it can access any inventory, even modded inventories, storage drawers, things like that, that are adjacent to it. So if you put it adjacent to your drawer controller or your controller slave or anything of that nature, you can access it. And it really creates almost like a miniature AE system because you could have multiple little industrial work tables set up attached to slaves, and you could have, recipes in all of them, even changing out memory sticks, and do all of your crafting through just a large drawer network. And next up, let's talk about the personal blocks and the trading blocks. So first up, the personal blocks. Basically, you have a personal safe that stores items. You have a personal tank, which stores fluids. And you have personal bat box, MFE, and MFSU. And what these do is, when you open these, I can see there's items in here. But if another player came over and they clicked on this, they wouldn't be able to see my items. Now, there is an option in here for allow viewing. So if we turn this on, if someone was to come over here, they could see these items, but they wouldn't be able to access them. They couldn't take them, they couldn't move them, they couldn't do anything with them. There is also allow injection from world, which would allow you to pump items into this personal safe. There's also allow extraction to world, which would allow you to pump items out of the personal safe, if you turn these on. And you also have allow team member interaction. So if you have a team set up on your server and you had, a partner on your team and you click this button, it would allow your partner to access this, but no other players. So really, really nice feature. Now there's also this right here, void everything. If you hold shift and control and click it, then it will void everything within this personal safe. So for example, if I grabbed a bunch of industrial credits and threw them into there, control shift, void everything. So if you decide I don't want this stuff anymore and I don't want to bother with it, I can just void it. Now the personal tank is pretty much the same thing. It stores fluids, you have the void, you have all the same options. And then for the personal energy storage blocks, those have all the same options as well. So you have a bat box, stores 30,000 EU. You have an MFE, which stores 600,000 EU, and you have an MFSU, which stores a whopping 10 million. And of course, these follow the same rules. Nobody can access them unless it's a team member and you allow them to. You can click to inject from world, extract to world, viewing. Now, one thing to note is the personal tank and the personal energy storage, the world interaction is not for the item slots. It's only for, in the case of the personal tank, it would be for the fluids, and for the energy, it would be for the energy. This is not going to allow you to pump in, say, your quantum suit stuff into the MFSU or pump buckets into the personal tank. It's not going to do that. It's only going to allow you to pump the fluids or the energy in. Now, next up, we have the trading blocks. We have a trade-o-mat, a fluid-o-mat, and an energy-o-mat. And basically what you can do is you can set up trades here. And IC2 Classic actually comes with its own set of coins that you can get. Now, these are not craftable by default anyways. But, you know, in a server type setting, currency could be put into the world or give you some way to earn this currency, and then you can use it at people's shops. So let's set up a trade. Let's say if you give me 8 dynamite, then I will give you 8 sticky dynamite. Okay? And we're going to say, you know, you can say use money, and you can put a coin cost to this. You can also say, if you're in creative mode, if it's a server admin or something, they can do a creative stock, which means that this item's not going to run out. It just is basically creative purchasing. There's also a trade cap per player, so you can limit players on a server to only buying so many of a given item. And then you can also do a delay between trades. So you can set it up by seconds, minutes, hours, or days that a given player has to wait before they can purchase it again. So if you wanted to have, say, you know, a shop that was set up to a weekly time limit so they could only purchase an item once per week, you could do that with the trade-o-mat. And if you have your trade already and you're happy with it, then you just hit create trade, and there we go. We have dynamite for sticky dynamite. And then you can also delete your trade here. You can also add custom trade. This is basically for mod makers, mod pack makers, so that they can set specific trades to trade-o-mats that will be preloaded on a trade-o-mat. So, you know, if it relates to their mod pack or something, they can integrate that within the custom trade option. Then there's also the fluid-o-mat. This does the same thing, but for fluids. And there's the energy-o-mat, which does the same thing, but for energy. So you can actually have it so that players can purchase energy, they can purchase fluids, and so on. Now, those controls that I mentioned earlier, there's a side inventory key. I have mine set to C currently. And if you hold that and right-click your trade-o-mat, you can actually see your trades in the same perspective that a buyer would see them. So I can do the trade count and everything as if I was purchasing from this trade-o-mat, even though it's my own. So side inventory key will allow you to do that. So I brought you over here to spawn so that you can see some examples of trade-o-mats from a buyer's perspective, because it's a little bit different when you're a buyer instead of a seller. So if we come over here, right here, we could buy resin, rubber, hops, and terrawort. So here you can set trade count. So let's say you put trade count to 4, you would be attempting to purchase a stack of sticky resin in that case. So you can set how many of these you want to order. You can also see their stock on hand. So right now there's no stock on sticky resin at the moment, so I can't actually purchase any of this. But then if we take a look over here at Dragon's Breath, there's 40 in stock. So that would be 40 batches of 5. So 160 Dragon's Breath. And if we look here in this personal safe, which I can actually look at other people's personal safes because I'm in creative mode. So just a heads up. You can see that allow viewing is not selected. So if I wasn't in creative mode, I would not be able to look inside of this. But you can see that there is indeed 40 trades worth of Dragon's Breath here. And if you look right here, there's 20 Dragon's Breath for 4. You can see the stock is 10. So these recipes, these trades can actually use, you know, the same inventory. And if you hit trade info, you can say coin cost is 8 coins. And there we go. That's an 8 coin value coin. Okay. And these trade-o-mats and energy-o-mats and all that, they can access personal safes that are adjacent to them. And just like how the trade-o-mats use the personal safe, the fluid-o-mats can use the personal tank, and then the energy-o-mats will use the personal bat box, MFE, or MFSU. Now, one thing to note about the fluid-o-mat as well as the energy mat, you will need something to store that. So we're going to make a quick trade and say that if you give me cobblestone, I will give you 1,000 water. And so now if I hold my side inventory key and I open up the Fluidomat, and let's say I wanted to purchase this water for 1 cobblestone, I could put an empty sail or a bucket or some kind of portable fluid storage into this, and I can hit trade. And you'll notice it makes that sound. That means that I purchased it. Now, since this is my Tradomat, I can't actually purchase items from myself. But, for example, if I didn't have that sale there and I hit trade, oops, hold the C button, and then if I hit trade, you'll see it says trade output is missing room. That's because there's nothing to put the fluid in. Now, energy works the same way. If I was selling energy, I would have to have something that can store the energy, for example, a battery or something of that nature. You can also charge, say, like the quantum suit or, any of your armor. You can put that in there, just somewhere for that energy to go after it's purchased. Okay, so next let's just talk about some basic starter armor. I'm not going to cover the composite, the nano suit, or the quantum armor just yet because some of those have added features and some of those you're going to have to wait until you get power. So we're going to wait until the following episodes to cover those. So you do have bronze armor. Now this stuff, if you notice, the chest piece is 8 armor. That is the same amount of armor as diamond. So very, very good stuff. It doesn't have the toughness that diamond does, but it's very, very effective armor for early game. And bronze, you can get this by crafting together just 3 copper dust and a tin dust. That's going to get you bronze. You smelt it, and you can make yourself some armor out of that. So pretty basic stuff. There's also a sword, a pickaxe, a shovel, an axe, a hoe, and a shield that goes with the armor set. So just a heads up on that. And this is the bronze armor the way it looks in-game. Now on this other side we have the hazmat suit. This consists of the rubber boots, the hazmat suit and leggings, and the scuba helmet. Now you guys are probably familiar with this because you have to wear this in standard IC2 to carry uranium and all of that, right? Well, there's also a few added features of the hazmat suit. If you're wearing the full set of hazmat, you are protected from fire and you can swim in lava with the suit on. So very, very nice when you're going to the nether. Now in addition, the scuba helmet, if you have compressed air cells in your inventory and you go underwater, anytime that you would run out of oxygen, instead it just consumes a compressed air cell. You actually get the empty cell back, but it's going to consume the air that's within that cell and fill your oxygen back up. So this is both a way to swim in lava, protection from fire, and as long as you keep compressed air on you, you have underwater breathing. So very, very nice feature, just something to keep in mind. Next up, let's talk about just a few blocks that are added within the mod. So you have the reinforced blocks. You may be familiar with these. You have reinforced stone, reinforced glass, and reinforced door. This door cannot be opened by standard right click. It does act like an iron door. You have to use a redstone signal to open a reinforced door. Now in addition, in IC2 Classic, there's also clear reinforced glass, as well as reinforced bricks, and cracked reinforced stone. Then there's also construction foam. Construction foam can be crafted with a water bucket, a water bottle, or a water sail, a little bit of clay dust, coal dust, and redstone. You can also get it with the CF sprayer, which we will get into that in a couple episodes from now. So just a heads up on that. But if you get this construction foam, if you craft it and you put it down, you're going to get this. Now basically what it has to do is it has to harden. But what you can do is you can right click it with sand and it will become construction foam. That's just a quick way to basically dry it out. You can also right click it with wool and it becomes construction foam wool. Now in addition, you can get yourself a painter and you can apply any color of dye to it just by putting it in a crafting table with that dye, and it's going to color the painter. And then what we can do is we can just go up and we can right click this construction foam wall and we can paint it blue. We can right click this construction foam wool, paint it blue, and let's say we decided that we wanted this to be magenta instead. Well, we can right click it and turn it into magenta. So that's how that works. Construction foam, we'll get into that a bit more next episode. You can actually hide cables with it, almost as it's basically the facades of IC2 Classic. And then in addition, there are these pixel foam blocks. Now these, of course, I don't generally cover crafting recipes, but I'm going to show you just really, really quickly. These, you can craft them by combining 2 different types of construction foam. You can see basically the colors that you see here. This one, for example, is yellow and black, so you're going to combine yellow and black. This one is blue and yellow, so you're going to combine blue and yellow. So basically these pixel foam blocks, they're decorative blocks. You could decorate with them. Personally, I love this Triforce when I'm a huge Zelda fan, and I do quite like that Triforce a lot. So next up we have the iron fences. These are basically a fence that's added with IC2, but it does have a couple really neat features. So first up, the iron fence, you'll notice it does not connect to walls. So for example, if I place one, there's nothing I have to do. It's not going to connect to that wall. Whereas the iron ones, you'll notice they get this, they want to hook to everything, right? Well, the iron fence doesn't do that. Now, in addition, if I was to put down a oak fence here, and then I connected the iron fence to it, you can see that the iron fence will actually connect to other types of fences. And this is not limited to just vanilla fences. If I grab a kapok fence from arboriculture, you'll notice that it connects to that one as well. Iron bars, however, it does not connect to. It only connects to fences. IC2 Classic also has scaffolding, so if we were to place down a piece of scaffolding, instead of having to stand up here and pillar our way up, what we can do is we can just left click the base of the scaffolding and it will build upwards. And then what we can do is, of course, we can take and climb this scaffolding, just like a ladder, from any side. And then if we go to break the bottom scaffolding, it will break all the above scaffolds. And then there's also an iron version of scaffolding that you can craft. And the main difference between these is iron ones are going to have a bit more strength than the wood ones do. So for example, if I build out from the scaffolding like that, you can see that I can't build anymore. I have reached the strength limit of the wood scaffolding. But if I take iron scaffolding, you can see that I can build out 5 blocks as opposed to 2. Now in addition, you can strengthen this. So if we put down, right click this with sticks, now you can see that we can build out 1 additional scaffolding block. And if I put sticks on the next 2, then I can build out an additional 2 more from that. Iron scaffolding has the same thing. I can add refined iron to it and build out a bit more. The difference being that the iron ones, refined iron goes a lot farther than sticks do. You can actually build out a lot farther with that scaffolding. So next up, let's talk about explosions really quickly. Now I will say that there is a nuke that you can craft. We'll get into that whenever we get into nuclear. But for right now, we're just going to cover TNT and dynamite. So first up, there is industrial TNT. This, if we were to put this down, click it with a redstone or a flint and steel, and it's going to explode. And it's a bit stronger than standard TNT. But now for my personal favorites, we have dynamite and we have sticky dynamite. Sticky dynamite will stick to where it hits. So if we throw that up there, you see that it sticks on the wall and does a small explosion. Now it's not quite as strong as TNT is, as you can tell. It's only going to do a 3x3. But it's kind of nice because you can throw it up against a wall and stick it to stuff, and it does have a 100% drop. So if you throw it up and you stick it to some ore or something that's on the ceiling and you don't want to have to pillar up to it, it is going to blow that ore loose and it's going to drop it to you. Now you also have standard dynamite, and if we take and right click this on the wall, you can see that we can just stick it along the wall. Now it's not lit, but what we can do is now we can come through and we can right click this with the dynamite emote, and it's going to turn it gray. So if we come through here and we right click all of these, it's going to turn all of them gray, and basically what that does is it links them to this dynamite emote. And you can see that it says it's linked to 8 dynamite. Now if we come back here and we right click it, it blows up all that dynamite at once. Sticky dynamite doesn't do that. That's only for the standard dynamite. But it's a nice little feature. So just bear in mind that the dynamite emote is only for standard dynamite, whereas the sticky dynamite is going to explode on its own, but it does stick to walls. And just a heads up, standard dynamite can also be thrown if you want to. So if you're not close enough to a block to right click and stick it, it will toss that dynamite as well. But keep in mind that it's just going to land where it lands. It's not going to stick to a wall. There's also the advanced comparator. This acts just like a standard vanilla comparator. So if I was to take a chest, for example, and I throw in some jungle saplings, you'll see that it activates and it has a power of 1. You know, it can read inventories, and it works just the same as a standard vanilla comparator. However, it can also be placed on walls and on ceilings. So very, very nice feature. Basically, it's an anywhere comparator. So for example, if I put if I had a chest right here and I wanted the comparator to be under the floor and go down into redstone, I throw jungle saplings in there, and there we go. We have a power of 1 on this redstone. So it basically, you can, you know, if you want stuff to go underneath, but the vanilla comparator just isn't cutting it, then you can use the advanced comparator. And really the only thing that an advanced comparator cannot do that a vanilla comparator can is an advanced comparator cannot read items within item frames. And that pretty much covers the basic stuff and some of the basic mechanics within the mod. We'll cover more, the machines, the power, the crops, the brewing, all that stuff in future episodes. But that just covers a lot of the basic kind of miscellaneous blocks and stuff of that nature. Now, before we end out the episode, I promised to show you guys the amazing world of rubber boats. And I've set up this little thing here, and this is just an example of what you could do with the rubber boats. The Minecraft ice boat races, this is kind of like the future of modded Minecraft, in my opinion. So basically what I've got is a teleporter here. We'll get into teleporters later on. That leads to the bouncy boat game. And if we pop up here, you can grab a free bouncy boat, and you try to hit the water below. So let's grab one of these. We're going to set it down right here. And now you can either go in first person or you can go in third person. I'm going to go in third person just to show you guys. Normally I do this in first person. It's a little bit more fun, in my opinion. But basically, if we drop down, I've kind of got like a little target here. If you hit slime, oh, I hit the metal. That's a bad aim on my part. So we're going to try this again. If you hit the slime, you actually get a super bounce, like a super bounce. If I recall correctly, I know I've got the mini map turned off, but it actually takes us up to Y level 280 to 300, depending kind of on where you hit the slime blocks. And of course you could also rig up something to do slime blocks with pistons and even get a bigger bounce if you wanted to, because basically what happens is the rubber boat will apply a bounce effect, but it stacks with the slime block bounce. And so you end up with these like super high bounces. And so the goal is, I've kind of got like a little target down there. And if we hit it, I will say the trampoline blocks, they don't bounce you as high. But if we hit this, we've got some tripwires here. And you have won the game. Now that's just an example of something that you could do with the rubber boats. You could do, there's like the parkour maps and stuff. But imagine maps that are built with the bouncy boat in mind, bouncing from block to block and all that. I mean, there's some really cool stuff that you could do. This is just an example. It's nothing too elaborate, just something that Spiger and I built yesterday over the course. We were just messing with boats, and I got a little bit sidetracked. I was building boat games and stuff instead of working. So anyways, just an example, just an idea to get you guys thinking of some of the stuff that you could do with rubber boats and some of the fun that you could have with them. Anyways, that's all I've got for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, there's a whole lot more. We've barely scratched the surface in this first video. Of course, we have machines coming up. We have crops. We have brewing. We have power generation. We have nuclear stuff. We have upgrades. I mean, if you just take a quick look here at the IC2 Classic NEI, you can see there's 4 pages of stuff. There's an absolute ton of things. I also have some really cool build ideas coming up for you guys. Things that you could do with some of the components of the mod that I think you guys are going to like, including things like turrets and stuff of that nature. Also some cool power generation and whatnot. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, as always, be sure to hit that like button. Go ahead and subscribe if you're not already to stay up to date with when new videos come out. Be sure and check out the mod. I'll include a link down below to the download page for the mod. So definitely check it out. It's a lot of fun. There's a ton of stuff that's in the mod. If you're like me, you're tired of standard, IC2 experimental, definitely check it out. I think you guys will love it. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time. Until then, as always, do take care, stay safe, and I will see you guys then.